Viper, Congressman. The Viper.
Well, Benny, fancy you should mention that.
I didn't know that. For everybody watching live, I can confirm I've been in the studio with Klein all morning. We didn't know it. He's got the Viper jacket on. That's amazing, Congressman.
And Benny, and I only have one jacket that I had made that way, but today was the day to do it for you. Whether you're biting like a viper, strangling like an anaconda, or just a watchdog, it's got to be a great day to see the ultimate in hypocrisy, the man who went after and caused the indictment of so many innocent people to be hoisted on his own petard as we speak, to be seen in his own handwriting, writing things which he then denied that he did before Congress. It is a day to say, you know what, be careful how self-righteous you are when you go after other people and then say how pure you are, because James Comey right now is in the spotlight, and rightfully so.
Yeah, let's talk about that handwriting. Obviously, you are well aware of Hillary Clinton and her capacity to lie and to manipulate the media. You've seen it firsthand. You've investigated it firsthand. And so I want to focus in on this little box right here. I think there's a lot of questions about this and what James Comey meant. But clearly, according to all the extemporaneous reporting, plans to tie President Trump to dirty Russia collusion is what was being talked about way before we ever thought that it was being talked about here on September 26th of the election year of 2016. This is damning, Congressman.
Well, it is. And I want to contrast the two. I'm not sure that Hillary knew truth versus lie. So mens rea may not apply to her because she just doesn't understand what the truth is. Comey spent his career knowing what was and wasn't admissible, what was or wasn't a false statement. And he went after plenty of people for perjury when, in fact, things like this handwriting and other parts of the text thread we're seeing make it clear that he knew he was telling something that wasn't true, misleading Congress, and that is a felony.
What would be the way to investigate this from a congressional perspective? Because I think there's a lot of now new questions about James Comey. Will we see superseding indictments potentially for some of the leaking of classified information? Is there further investigation to be done by Congress here? JB has just, that's not Joe Biden, that's John Brennan. Is Brennan going to be before your committee anytime soon? He's somebody who's still walking free.
Look, we're going to continue to do our parallel investigation, but remember, ours is a legislative investigation. It's about finding out what went wrong in the system, finding out how we prevent it in the future, holding people accountable. Ultimately, it's up to the Attorney General and the Department of Justice to do their job. And so we're going to make sure that we stay in our lane, but our lane does require that there be disclosure to anything that is not prohibited from being disclosed based on an ongoing criminal investigation. And in this case, we want to make sure that it's only that's being withheld, because the American people have a right to know that President Trump had much of his first 4 years destroyed by a well-planned attack against democracy, one that limited much of his ability to get things done, because he and his entire staff were constantly dealing with these false accusations trumped up by people, excuse the expression, but put forward by people who ultimately did not want him to succeed, who famously planned to have this backup plan to stop him if he won the election fair and square.
This is such a great question for you as the Viper of Oversight and Judiciary, Congressman. And we're just going to go with that. That's obviously, we're going to make you your own custom stinger. By the time this is all over, you'll be like a WWE guy coming on the show. But why? Why haven't you been able to get this document? This doesn't make any sense to me. You've served in Congress quite a number of terms. This document is close to a decade old. Why is it just out this morning? Congressman?
Because unfortunately, when we subpoena the private sector, they recognize they have to comply. When we subpoena the other branch, they take it under advisement. And that's not just true with one party. It is an inherent bias they have. The Department of Justice, under all the previous presidents that I've worked with, have all talked about longstanding policies, not law, not any actual constitutional right, not to bend to the other branch that's responsible both for their funding and for their oversight. And that is a problem. And it's a problem that we don't have enough teeth in it. It's one of the things that in my long ago book, it's a decade old now, called Watchdog, we talk about is that Congress can make the American people aware of a great deal, but the actual teeth necessary to hold this ever larger and more opaque government accountable is relatively limited, because our founding fathers, to a certain extent, believed that would be good faith. One of the reasons that, switching a little, James Comey is trying to get this case dismissed based on something that President Trump said. Our founding fathers gave the entire authority to indict and convict and to try people to one person, the president. But assuming that it would be properly overseen and properly delegated, which it certainly has been under President Trump, not so much under both Obama and Biden, who clearly were orchestrating at least their offices, were orchestrating the weaponization of the legal system.
So I guess the final question here on this topic, Congressman, would be what happens next? I don't think James Comey is going to win this malicious prosecution. And this was a legal bombshell that I'm not sure anyone was expecting. And I have to assume that based on his behavior and the behavior of John Brennan, they're panicking. Many have been pointing to this grand criminal conspiracy that has been impaneled in the Southern District of Florida. What would be your assessment on the next steps here as it pertains against a grand criminal conspiracy?
Look, I think Pam Bondi will get nothing out of James Comey until he's convicted. And we have to have faith that a jury in Maryland, very similar to the one that Hunter Biden saw, made up almost exclusively of Democrats, when faced with absolute truth of a crime, will do the right thing. There are others, though, and this is where I hope both Congress and particularly the Department of Justice will look at so many people who were not kingpins, but who know enough to help us with this investigation. This was a grand conspiracy, and there were lots of witnesses. Many of them are lifelong Democrats, public officials, but they saw it. And if you see something and you now know that it's going to come to your door, maybe you should go to the door of the Department of Justice and tell them what you know for the good of the country and, quite frankly, to get yourself out from the middle of it. Because there were plenty of people who knew enough that they also could be indicted. And their way to safety is, in fact, to help us bring this to an expeditious close with the true kingpins being held accountable.
Fascinating that you say that, because Congressman, there's somebody who is stashing away these documents. Very mysterious. And that individual, if they're stashing them in a skiff, is certainly on camera, certainly punching in a key code. Trying to hide these documents is going to be seen as a crime, clearly, right?
Well, we'd like to believe so, but a crime is based on the willingness to prosecute and a jury to convict. What we do have is we have enough information, whether convictions occur in all cases or not, for the American people to understand that a party with malice and forethought, maybe not Joe Biden personally, because quite frankly, we're not, or Hillary Clinton, we're not sure of them. What we are sure is that they put together an organization that deliberately used the power of government to try to remain in power indefinitely. And when they lost power, to get it back through false allegations. Those are the kinds of things that undermine the basic honesty of the system that our founding fathers relied on. Our Constitution does not protect us completely against personal corruption. Only the goodwill of people, or people willing to disclose those with malice and poor intent, will keep us that way. And so that's one of the reasons that the things, podcasts like yours, and going as public as possible, we want people to understand we just want to get the balance of government, both sides, back where it should be. This should never happen. There should never be this kind of conspiracy, and it should never be allowed by people who otherwise wouldn't break the law to happen.
Yeah, a balance of government, I suppose, would be some type of check and balance against people who use insider information to trade stocks, people who stay in their position for 40 odd years, people like Nancy Pelosi, who allegedly is bowing out. Now, given the fact that, Congressman, you are one of the few Republicans elected from California, I'm sure this is, perhaps you have an inside lane on this. Any thoughts on this? I know it hasn't been exactly confirmed yet, but what are your thoughts on Pelosi parting?
Speaker Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi, Paul Pelosi's wife, she is not the person I met decades ago. She's diminished. She is not listened to the way she once was, and she's out of favor with her own party. And that's pretty hard to say when you're talking about a leftist from San Francisco. So it probably is past the appropriate time for her to exit. But I do believe that we're going to see in more or less February an announcement of her retirement. And with her, she takes the massive amount of money accumulated during her career by her brilliant husband's ability to outperform Warren Buffett in investment somehow.
Yep, it's a pretty nice retirement fund. Sure, it would be a shame if she got investigated one of these days for it, or got asked some questions about January 6th, but that's a topic for another day. Congressman, of course, we will book you for. Everybody follow Congressman. Representative Darrell Issa is sitting here with a plum 250,000 subscribers on X. You should be one of them. He's one of the people who fight for you. The Viper from the California mountains. Watch where you step. Darrell Issa, Godspeed.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben.